Chapter 3. The market is always right. If all trading stopped at any particular price, what would this last posted price represent? At the most fundamental level, this last price, or any current price, would represent the consensus belief about value, relative to the future, of all the traders who are in the market in that moment. The current price is a direct reflection of the beliefs of all the traders who choose to act as a force on prices by putting on a trade. So, when there are two traders, one wanting to buy and one wanting to sell at a price and do so, they have made a trade, and they have also made a market. All that is needed to make the market right are two traders willing to trade at a price, regardless of the criteria they use to determine value, how rational, irrational, meaningful, or meaningless by your or anyone else's belief system. If two traders are willing to express their belief in future value by making a trade, they have made a market. Unless the trade can be undone, it has to be right by virtue of the fact that it was made. What you wanted, thought, believed, or expected is of no consequence in the overall scheme of things unless you can trade with enough volume to control the market and move prices in the direction you deem to be correct. To do this, you would personally have to represent a buying or selling force strong enough to absorb all the counteracting buying or selling represented by the traders who didn't happen to agree with you, at any given moment, with enough financial power left over to bid or offer the price where you want it to be. For an observer of market behavior, each trade that is made and the type of movement it creates in prices can tell you something about the consistency of the market and potential for movement in a direction, if you can discern the meaning and put that meaning within some framework. Defining opportunity. Price movement creates opportunities to buy low and sell high, or vice versa, if you can perceive what is likely to be high and low relative to some point in the future. Movement in any given direction is equivalent to the amount of force that is being applied to create that movement. For example, if prices penetrated all-time lows, the fact that you may have believed that they would not do it is meaningless unless you can personally trade with enough volume to move the price back above the old low. You have to consider that for prices to have penetrated all-time lows, there must have been more traders who believed that the current price was above what they considered to be of value, at least enough to where they believed the all-time low was a selling opportunity, or they would not have sold. For prices to follow through and continue to go lower would indicate that there are more traders willing to act on their belief that prices are high, and as a result sell, than there are traders who are willing to buy at those prices, all-time lows. What you believed about value and your reasons for believing it may be of highest quality, but if the market doesn't share your belief, it doesn't really matter how right you are based on your superior reasoning process or what you believe to be the quality of your information, because prices are going to go in the direction of the greatest force. The point here is that right and wrong as you may traditionally think of them don't exist in the market environment. Academic credentials, degrees, reputations, even a high IQ don't make you right in this environment as they would in society. Traders, acting on their belief in the future by putting on a trade, are the only force that can act on prices to make them move. Movement creates opportunity to make money, and making money is what trading is all about. This is also true for the hedger trading to protect the value of his assets. Each individual trader will define what market condition represents enough of an opportunity to put on a trade for whatever reason suits him, regardless of how wrong you think he may be, if the net result of the collective actions of all the traders participating is moving prices against your position, then they're right. And you're the one who is losing money. The market is never wrong in what it does, it just is. Therefore, you as an individual trader interacting with the market, first as an observer to perceive opportunity, then as a participant executing a trade, contributing to the overall market behavior, have to confront an environment where only you can be wrong, and it's never the other way around. As a trader, you have to decide what is more important, being right or making money, because the two are not always compatible or consistent with one another. Chapter 4. There is unlimited potential for profit and loss. The most effective manner to illustrate the unlimitedness of the market environment is to compare it to gambling. With any gambling game, you will always know exactly how much you can win or lose each time you play. You decide exactly how much you want to wager, you know exactly how much you can win as well as lose, and you may even know the mathematical odds of either possibility. This is not the case in market environment. In any particular trade, you never really know how far prices will travel from any given point. If you never really know where the market may stop, it is very easy to believe there are no limits to how much you can make on any given trade. From a psychological perspective, this characteristic will allow you to indulge yourself in the illusion that each trade has the potential of fulfilling your wildest dream of financial independence. Based on the consistency of market participants, ratio between buyers and sellers, and their potential to act as a force great enough to move prices in your direction, the possibility of having your dreams fulfilled may not even remotely exist. However, if you believe it does, then you will have the tendency to gather only the kind of market information that will confirm and reinforce your belief, all the while denying vital information that may be telling you the best opportunity is in the opposite direction. If you are in a losing trade, the market could be moving farther and farther away from your entry point, increasing your potential loss by the moment. While this is happening, however, you may only be able to imagine it coming back in your favor, instead of confronting the possibility of the market continuing against your position. This type of thought process will continue until the sheer magnitude of the loss overwhelms you, and the possibility of the loss increasing is suddenly more pertinent than the possibility of the market coming back. You finally exit the trade, never intending or ever imagining you could have allowed yourself to take such a large loss. From a psychological perspective, the possibility for unlimited profits, happiness, power, and so on, whatever it means to you when you imagine making all the money you ever wanted to make, can be extremely dangerous. The possibility may in fact exist, but how realistic it is in any given trade is another matter. There are several psychological factors that go into being able to assess accurately the market's potential for movement in any given direction. 1 of them is releasing yourself from the notion that each trade has the potential to fulfill all your dreams. At the very least, this illusion will be a major obstacle keeping you from learning how to perceive market action from an objective perspective. Otherwise, if you continually filter market information in such a way as to confirm this belief, learning to be objective won't be a concern because you probably won't have any money left to trade with. Chapter 5. Prices are in perpetual motion with no defined beginning or ending. The markets are always in motion, they never stop, only pause. As long as there are traders who, for whatever reasons, are willing to buy higher than the last price and, as a result, bid the price up, or traders willing to sell for less than the last price and offer the marker lower, prices will remain in perpetual motion. Even when the markets are closed, prices are theoretically in motion. For example, what price traders may be willing to buy or sell at on the opening the next day does not have to be at the price level the market closed at the previous day. What are usually thought of as three simple decisions of enter, hold, or liquidate a trade become a perpetual process of deciding how much is enough from both a profit and a loss perspective. If you are in a profitable trade, is there ever enough? Greed stems from a belief that there is never enough or there won't be enough. In an unlimited environment that is in perpetual motion, isn't there always the possibility of getting more? The appetite of true greed can never be satisfied, it will always leave the greedy ones with a feeling of lacking regardless of how much they have acquired. If you are in a losing trade, you won't want it to exist because it represents failure, so you can just act as if it doesn't by convincing yourself that you are in a winning trade that hasn't gone in your favor yet. The "how much is enough" question can be answered in an infinite number of ways relative to your beliefs on the value of money, what you need it for, how important it is, can you really risk it, how secure do you feel, and what is enough today may not be enough tomorrow because of other factors in your life, all relative questions that have no definitive answers and change with the changing environmental conditions. Having to confront these personal issues as a trader will only contaminate your observations of market movement because they have nothing to do with market direction and the potential or lack of potential of any particular market move. This is why successful traders have always stated emphatically, only trade with money you can afford to lose, meaning money that has little or no value in your life. The less meaning the money has, the less potential there is for your personal "how much is enough" issues to contaminate your perception of market movement. Thus, if you allow it, the market can always tempt you into thinking there may be more to be had in a winning trade and always give you something to hang on to in order to justify your hope that it will come back and make you whole. If you are in a losing trade, succumbing to either one of these temptations subjects you to the possibility of some very negative and painful consequences. The market environment is also unstructured in such a way that, from a psychological perspective, there is no beginning and there is no ending. What I mean by this statement, before you think that it's not true, the market opens and closes at a specified time every day, is that from the perspective of the individual trader, the game only begins when you decide to enter and ends only when you decide to exit irrespective of market openings and closings. You have the freedom to structure the game inside your mind in any particular way you please. You can get in whenever you want for whatever reasons are good enough to justify your actions. You can get out whenever you want. In fact, the game only ends when you have decided that you've had enough and take the appropriate action to end it. The psychological implications to the individual confronting these conditions are staggering. Entering a trade will involve all your beliefs about opportunity in relationship to risk, missing out, needing a sure thing, and not being wrong. Exiting a trade will involve all your beliefs about loss, greed, failure, and control. Considering the unlimited potential for profit, entering the market will be much easier for most traders than will be getting out. This is because exiting the trade will require that you confront your beliefs about greed, loss, and failure in relationship to the constant temptation of the possibility for unlimited profits. These individual psychological issues are completely independent of objective market action. And even more significant, as I will explain in Part 3, your beliefs about loss, being wrong, failure, and control will operate independently of your conscious intent. For example, Think of that. Last time you perceived an opportunity to profit and the fear of being wrong, or losing, and so on, immobilized you, keeping you from putting on the trade. To the extent that these issues exist as a component of your mental environment, they will determine the effect they have on your perception of market activity, the decisions you make, and your ability to act on what you decide. However, one of the most significant and potentially damaging factors related to this no beginning and no ending characteristic of the market environment is that it allows you to be a passive loser. The best way to illustrate this concept is to compare the markets with any form of gambling games. For example, with blackjack, horse racing, or craps, the player has to make a conscious choice to play and decide before the event exactly how much he will wager. The event begins and ends according to the rules of the game, and the risk of loss is limited to the size of the wager. Each new event is a fresh start, where the odds of winning may be determined by mathematical probabilities, and the rules of the game automatically take the player out after each event. When the game ends, the player knows exactly what the outcome is and then must make a conscious decision to participate again. Therefore, the structure of the game forces the player to be an active loser, to subject himself to the possibility of losing any more money than he has already lost requires that he place a wager for a specified amount. He has to actively participate to lose and do nothing to stop losing. Obviously, if the player does nothing, he will not be subjecting his assets to the possibility of loss. If the player is losing consistently, he will need to confront his beliefs about loss and failure to quit playing altogether. This could be difficult, because he can always rationalize that inside of us that keep us from objectively perceiving what the market is telling us about the possibilities and potential for profit in any given moment. The markets make it extremely easy for you not to have to confront these very tough psychological issues. For example, if you focus your attention on price movement at the tick-by-tick level, the market can graphically display billions of combinations of behavior characteristics and price patterns to get from one point to the next. It is very easy to use this type of information to support any belief, rationalization, justification, distortion, or illusion you need to want to have about where it is going in the future. Most traders will attempt to simplify price movement by thinking the price can only do three things: go up, go down, or stay basically the same. Some traders may even carry this distorted logic to the point where they believe there is a 50-50 probability for success in any given trade. This, of course, couldn't be further from the truth. For example, let's say that prices stayed within a 10-tick trading range for an entire trading session. If you take into account each tick, how many price patterns is it possible for the market to display going from the top to bottom of the range and then back again? I'm not a statistician, but I'm sure it's at least millions. To illustrate this a little further, if point A is the bottom of the range, prices could have changed up 1 tick, down 2, up 1, down 3, up 2, down 1, up 1, down 2, up 3, down 1, up 2, down 1, up 1, down 1, up 2, down 1, up 3, down 1, up 2, down 1, up 3, down 1, up 1, down 1, up 2, down 1, up 3 to point B, 10 ticks up from point A. This is obviously a very shortened version of the way prices usually move, but it does represent one pattern out of millions of possible pattern combinations, and each pattern you identify can repeat itself at some point in the future. If you are a buyer at point A, what are the odds the price will stay above your Entry point. What are the odds that the price will be above or significantly above your entry point tomorrow or the next day without having gone below your entry point first, by 2 ticks, 5 ticks, or 10 ticks, before it goes back up again above your entry point? Once prices go below your entry point, what are the odds they never go above your entry point? What are the odds they never go below? To answer these questions, you would have to know a great deal about the consistency of the market and its potential to behave in certain ways. In any case, relative to most traders' emotional disposition to deal with this kind of movement and within the context that most people think of as 50 to 50 odds, it definitely doesn't apply in the markets. To illustrate another point, if you got short halfway between points A and B, which ticks would you have the tendency to place greater weight on in terms of market information? The down ticks, naturally. They confirm what you believe. And the up ticks don't, yet each in relationship to one another can tell you something about the consistency of the market and its potential to move in any given direction. How can you begin to assess that potential accurately if you place a greater significance specifically on the information that confirms what you want or believe? In effect, you would be using the information to suit your hopes, dreams, wishes, and desires instead of perceiving it in a manner to assess the market's actual potential to do any of the foregoing. Thus, what you have in the market environment is a deadly combination of the market forcing you to confront difficult personal issues to survive, an event that produces information in a wide variety of forms that can be used to support any illusion, distortion, or expectation, therefore, making it easy to avoid confronting these potentially painful issues. Furthermore, the event continues on until you come to terms with whatever is inside of you to end it. Unless your brokerage firm liquidates your position, you are the only one who can make it stop. Among many other factors, to become a consistently successful trader, your objective has to be to learn how to let the market tell you what it may do next and how much is enough. This is extremely difficult when you consider there is absolutely no relationship between what the market may do next and your personal belief system on what it means to lose, what it means to be wrong, greed, fear founded in a belief there will never be enough, and revenge. I can anticipate a lot of readers saying to themselves, I can understand the loss, being wrong, and greed issues, but where does revenge come into this? This can best be illustrated by going back to the gambling game. Example. In a gambling game you can only lose what you decide to risk. You bet the money and it's difficult not to accept the responsibility for any losses. As a trader, however, you could easily lose far more than you intended to risk, based on your inability to perceive the possible or your inability to execute a trade to get out of your position, or a combination of both. You may have been willing to take responsibility for what you originally intended to risk on a trade, although most traders are not willing to take this responsibility, which I will demonstrate further on. However, it might not be so easy to take responsibility for losing more than what you intended to risk. This is where the revenge factor comes into play. If you don't take responsibility for what you lost, then who or what can you blame? The markets, of course. The markets took your money. If the markets took from you more than you originally intended to risk, then you will likely feel compelled to get it back. For example, is a 10-tick profit enough in the trade you are currently in? If you lost 20 in the last trade, the market may be giving the objective observer a very clear indication that where the price is now is all that is left in the move, and the highest probability for success is to take profits now. If you lost 20 ticks in the last trade and you only intended to risk 5 and the market is now offering you 10, are you going to take it? If you believe in getting back, 10 won't be enough regardless of what the market is doing or telling you. You will need at least 15 and preferably 20 to make you whole. Your last trade obviously has nothing to do with the potential that exists in the market at any given moment. When you feel compelled to get back, it puts you in an adversary relationship with the market. The market becomes your opponent, it is you against it, instead of being in harmony with it. The market can't take anything away from you that you don't allow. If you lost money or lost more than you intended to risk, you gave your money to other traders. Ultimately, however, revenge creates an adversary relationship with yourself. If you're the one who gives your money to the market, you are also the one who gives yourself money out of the market. If you are angry with yourself for letting the last trade get so out of hand, whatever the market is offering you now in terms of an opportunity won't be enough. From a psychological perspective, you won't take the opportunity for a profit or otherwise because you haven't accepted the last trade as being all right. In effect, you will be denying yourself the current or next opportunity to punish yourself for the past mistake. In reality, you can't get back at the market, and a belief in revenge only allows you to get back at yourself. There is a direct correlation between your ability to let the market tell you what it is likely to do next and the degree to which you have released yourself from the negative effects of any beliefs about losing, being wrong, and revenge on the markets. Not being aware of this relationship, most traders will continue to observe the market from a contaminated perspective until they either make the association through trial and error or become aware of this relationship through a book such as this. In any case, by the time those who figure it out do so, they have usually subjected themselves to so much psychological damage that it adds a much more difficult dimension to the process of becoming successful. This is the principal reason why this book had to address the areas of personal transformation in such depth. You need to know if there is any damage, how to identify it, and most important, how to release yourself from it. Chapter 6. The market is an unstructured environment. Unlike structured social activities that have defined beginnings and endings and rigid rules to guide your behavior, the market environment is more like a river constantly flowing, with no beginning or ending, with almost no structure. Once you jump in the river, it can change directions at any moment. It may have been flowing north when you jumped in, however. Without any notice, it can start flowing south. It's unstructured to the point where you make up all your own rules to play by, with a great deal of latitude to do so. You will have to decide if and when you're going to jump in and with how much force. If you are already in, you have the option of increasing the force you apply at any time or of decreasing it. There are no rules preventing you from jumping out at any moment to change your intended direction to flow with the market, or you can jump out and stay out, and the market just keeps on flowing. In an unstructured and unlimited environment, it is essential that you establish rules to guide your behavior. You will need to create definition and give yourself direction. Otherwise, you will feel overwhelmed with too many possibilities. Without these rules, one of the most likely possibilities is that you will create devastating losses for yourself. The big psychological problem here is, if you make up and have to play by your own rules, you also have to take total and complete responsibility for your actions as well as the outcome of your actions. The degree to which you do assume responsibility is the same degree to which you can't shift it to the market and be its victim. The typical trader will do most anything to avoid creating definition and rules because he does not want to take responsibility for the results of his trading. If he knows exactly what he is going to do and under what conditions, then he would have something by which to measure his performance, thus making himself accountable to himself. This is exactly what most traders don't want to do, preferring instead to keep their relationship with the market somewhat mysterious. This creates a real psychological paradox for traders, because the only way to learn how to trade effectively is to make oneself accountable by creating structure, but with accountability comes responsibility. The typical trader desperately wants to make money, but he has to do it in a way where there is no direct connection between what he does and the outcome that it produces, thereby avoiding responsibility if things don't turn out satisfactorily. To develop a plan, you have to anticipate events to some extent relative to the depth of your plan. When you plan your trades in advance, you are putting your vision of the future and creative abilities on the line, so to speak, and making yourself accountable to yourself. Your plan either works or it doesn't. You either have the ability to execute your plan or you don't. In any case, it is your plan and your ability to follow it, and, therefore, it is difficult to shift responsibility and lay the blame somewhere else if things don't work out. Now, when a trader doesn't understand market behavior well enough to know what he is going to do and under what market conditions he is going to do it, but if at the same time, he is very attracted to the action and the opportunities he knows exist, and if he is also impatient with the learning process, his impatience and attraction will make him feel compelled to do something, even if he doesn't know what he should do. How do you think the typical trader will resolve this dilemma? He will play follow the leader, rationalizing that everybody else is doing something and, furthermore, all these people waving their hands and screaming can't be as afraid and unknowing as himself, so they must know what they are doing, or at least they know more than him. If he does what they do, or better yet, identifies the most successful trader and does what that trader does, then he too can make money. This type of rationale creates a herd mentality, extremely prevalent on the floor of the exchanges, where most everyone is looking for direction, assuming everyone else must know something they don't, otherwise why would they be doing anything? In a group, this collective mentality is very volatile, where one key trader can start an endless series of chain reactions where everyone mirrors everyone else, all assuming that the other guy must have some rational reason for doing what he is doing. In fact, I wouldn't even describe what goes on down on the trading floor as follow the leader. It is actually better described as follow the follower, because most traders don't know what the leader is doing or who the leader may be at any given moment. Therefore, the group's behavior is like these endless waves of back and forth movement, where the traders closest to the leaders being those who know exactly what they want to do and why they want to do it, will have the first opportunity to get on the bandwagon at the best price, and those next closest have diminished opportunities, and so on down the line until you get to the least skilled trader, who doesn't have much of a chance at all. When there is no leadership in the market, the prices usually drift back and forth in a small range until someone who knows what he is doing comes into the market. If the prices have made any significant move during or at the end of the trading day, all the crowd followers get together to find any reason or rationale that might explain the market's behavior and put it into some understandable context. Basically, what they come up with is a consensus reason for the market's behavior that day. However, the leaders, those traders who take responsibility for their trades and know exactly why they did what they did, do Not feel compelled to talk to anyone and usually don't. The typical crowd. Follower feels compelled to find reasons outside of himself because these reasons don't exist inside of himself, and he doesn't want to think he is irrational and acts randomly. For the crowd follower, trading this way serves many functions. It keeps his relationship with the market mysterious. If he makes money, he must have done something right. If he loses money, he can blame the market, which is obviously very acceptable behavior among traders, since so many of them do it. The rational or logical explanation for the individual's part in the collective behavior will be decided on later, after the fact, by the consensus opinion of the group. This way he can maintain an illusion of being rational and responsible, and whatever happened to him also happened to a lot of other traders, so at least he knows he is not alone, which then creates a sense of comradeship among competitors. Outside of the world of trading, most people think that traders are rugged individualists, associating them with the characteristics of the entrepreneurial types, like being decisive and persevering. Most outside people would be shocked to learn that except for a small minority of successful traders, the rest fall into a group that, at any given moment, have no idea about what they are going to do next or know why they are even doing what they are doing. If you ask them to tell you specifically how they make money or lose money, they couldn't tell you. In addition, as a group, traders, except for the leaders, are indecisive and impatient to an extreme. It isn't too difficult to determine why, if you consider that under normal conditions, the frame of mind of the average trader is one notch away from unrestrained terror. Getting organized and creating structure is one obvious solution to the many psychological problems the typical trader heaps on himself. But that would also force him to cross that psychological boundary line into the realm of accountability and responsibility. Besides the outright refusal to plan trades, most traders go to great lengths to put as much psychological distance as possible between what they do and the outcome of their actions. I know many traders who can do extremely good market analysis on their own but still seek opinions of other traders on what to do and then take those trades instead of their own, simply because they don't want to take responsibility if the trade doesn't work out. And, more often than not, sticking with their own analysis would have produced far better results. There are many floor traders who trade hundreds of contracts a day, and although they have to record each trade on a trading card, they will not keep an accurate account of their net trading position, claiming they get too busy or that they added wrong. At the end of the day, they count their cards with intense anxiety, hoping or praying to whatever unseen forces that they are flat, not carrying a net long or short position. Obviously, if they were that concerned, the simple solution to their problem would be to trade only at a volume level where they can always keep track of where they are at, and if they lose track, to stop trading until they get a correct count. But they wouldn't want to do that because, if they kept track of their position, then they would have to take the responsibility for what they end up with. What if they inadvertently end up with a net long position at the end of the day and the market opens several ticks higher the next morning? The unseen market forces have thus blessed these traders with a winning position, or conversely, if the market opens lower, they can always find someone or something to blame for their bad fortune. Maybe their lucky tie was sent to the dry cleaners by mistake, or they hit 3 red lights in a row on the way to the exchange. Any reason or excuse to shift responsibility will do. These reasons can range from the most eloquent academic jargon to the most superstitious beliefs. But in essence, they all focus blame outside of oneself for unsatisfactory results. In an unlimited environment, the less structure you create for yourself, the less accountable you are, the more easily you will be swept along by the force of events, and the less control you seem to have over your life. However, having less structure has the benefit of shifting the responsibility for the events in your life to other unidentified forces. This is precisely why so many traders have such a strong belief in superstitions. If a person refuses to make any connection between his thoughts, intents, skills, and results, then it is very easy to associate one's success or failure to something like the tie one had on that day, or inadvertently making some gesture and then finding oneself in a losing trade and associating the gesture with the loss. I have a personal story to illustrate a typical superstitious belief that traders have. One morning I went into the men's bathroom at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and as I approached the only urinal not in use, a floor trader using the urinal next to the one I was about to use turned his head, looked at me, and said, in a very cautious tone, "Don't use that one, you can wait for mine, I'll be done in a second." I gave him a puzzled look, and he then pointed to a penny that was at the bottom of the urinal. I gave him another puzzled look because I didn't have the slightest idea about what he was trying to communicate to me. As I proceeded to use the urinal with the penny in it, he turned with a nervous expression on his face and strode away from me as quickly as he could. Later on that day, I told one of my floor trader clients about this experience and asked if he knew what was going on. He said certainly, that it was very common knowledge that money at the bottom of a urinal is a bad omen and certainly something to be avoided. After I thought about it for a moment, I wondered what would happen if I went through the entire exchange and put pennies in all the urinals. This story illustrates how the typical trader is caught in a psychological trap of refusing to plan and create structure for his trading activity, so that he can avoid taking responsibility for his results. And by doing so, he is subjecting himself to being tossed around by the whims of the crowd, at the mercy of his own unrestrained impulses, finding himself in winning and losing positions, not knowing why or what to do next. This trap is extremely negative because it creates a potentially damaging psychological condition I call random winning and random losing. If you can't define your own behavior and that of the markets, you can't learn how to repeat your wins or prevent your losses. When you win, it is so pleasurable, it creates a need to repeat it and compels you to try again. When you follow the crowd, instead of anticipating the crowd, which would take planning, or trade off news items, tips, or isolated signals from technical systems, the anticipation of the next attempt to win automatically produces fear and anxiety. Why? Because you can't define the market conditions or the decision-making process that produced the last win, and so you can't assure yourself of the next. If you don't know what you did to win the last time, you obviously don't know what to do to keep from losing this time. The end result is intense anxiety, frustration, confusion, and fear. You feel out of control, experiencing a sense of powerlessness as you are swept along by the ensuing events and wondering what is the market going to do to you today. Consider that the markets can't do anything to any trader who completely trusts himself to act appropriately, in his best interests, under all market conditions. And before people can trust themselves in this manner, they would first have to define all those conditions and be able to recognize them. Understandably, taking responsibility is something that is extremely difficult to do. We don't live in a society that has a highly evolved concept of the growth process, and as a result, we learn to become very intolerant of mistakes. I say this because we are basically taught as children and, therefore, in turn teach our children through our ridicule of them that mistakes are something that diminish one as a person. Ridicule does not enhance a child's willingness to accept responsibility, and if he doesn't, the typical parent will then criticize the child for being irresponsible. Taking responsibility is a function of self-acceptance. You can measure this degree of self-acceptance by how positively or negatively you think of yourself when you make what you perceive as a mistake. The more negatively you think of yourself, the greater your tendency to avoid taking responsibility, so you can avoid the pain of your harsh thoughts, thus generating a fear of making mistakes. However, the greater the degree of self-acceptance you have for yourself, the more positive your thoughts will be, and the greater the degree of insight you will be able to extract from an experience, instead of generating fear. The more self-accepting you are, the easier it is to learn because you are not trying to avoid certain information. I don't know of any national prerogative to teach children how to accept themselves in spite of their shortcomings, as perceived by the adults in their lives. If people had a more accepting attitude about the outcome of their actions, they wouldn't have a need to avoid taking responsibility. To be successful, the market forces you, as a trader, to be responsible in completely new ways. For example, you can't put on a trade and then release your responsibility to the market to do something for you, like give you money. The market is a fluid, ever-changing event, where at any moment some other trader may decide to jump in with enough force to change the expectations of other traders participating to the point where they reverse their positions and as a result completely negate the potential you believed existed a moment ago, when you put on your trade. In our everyday lives, objects are very stable, and day-to-day events do not change at anywhere near the rate and frequency that conditions change in the market environment. Relative to the nature of the market environment, all of us take it completely for granted that the buildings, trees, traffic lights, and streets we all know are completely stationary and will be there from one moment to the next. You didn't walk out of your front door this morning to discover the street you live on doesn't look just as it did the previous evening when you walked inside your home. If getting to the office or your place of employment represents an opportunity to make money, you would take it completely for granted that it would be possible to get there in familiar ways. However, as a potential opportunity to make money comparable to that afforded in the markets, what if the location changed on a moment-to-moment basis? What if the streets also changed their location in relationship to each other, and, furthermore, what if no one cared if you ever found your way there, making you, and you alone, completely responsible for where you end up? It just makes sense that to function in the market environment effectively you will need to make yourself accountable. Otherwise, how could you ever learn how to trade, if you allow yourself to be swept into or out of something by forces outside of you and inside of you that you can't identify and don't want to? The market's behavior will seem mysterious. Because your own behavior is mysterious, you will be in a constant state of confusion, anxiety, and fear because you don't know what to do next, the kind of state of mind that breeds superstition. Understanding yourself is synonymous with understanding the markets. Because as a trader you are part of the collective force that moves prices. How could you begin to understand the dynamics of group behavior well enough to extract money from the group, as a result of their behavior, if you don't understand the inner forces that affect your own? When you do understand the inner forces that affect your behavior and take responsibility for what you do and don't do, and what you can or can't do, You will begin to perceive how and why other traders comprising the group behave the way they do. When you attain some degree of control over yourself, you can then see how other traders are not in control of what happens to them, like blades of grass, all bending to the force of the prevailing wind and constantly being stepped on. You won't be able to see this until you are no longer a blade of grass yourself by evolving beyond the group mentality. Then it becomes much easier to understand the group's behavior, anticipate what they will likely do next, and take advantage of it to the best of your ability. You will understand the group, certainly, to no greater degree than you understand yourself. Creating definition and rules to make yourself accountable is but a first step on the road to lasting success. You could acknowledge their necessity and establish them, but then find to your dismay, it is extremely difficult to abide by them. In Part 3 we will examine the interacting mental forces that make it difficult to follow your own rules. To the extent that these issues exist as a component of your mental environment, they will determine the effect they have on your perception of market activity, the decisions you make, and your ability to act on what you decide. However, one of the most significant and potentially damaging factors related to this no beginning and no ending characteristic of the market environment is that it allows you to be a passive loser. The best way to illustrate this concept is to compare the markets with any form of gambling games. For example, with blackjack, horse racing, or craps, the player has to make a conscious choice to play and decide before the event exactly how much he will wager. The event begins and ends according to the rules of the game, and the risk of loss is limited to the size of the wager. Each new event is a fresh start, where the odds of winning may be determined by mathematical probabilities, and the rules of the game automatically take the player out after each event. When the game ends, the player knows exactly what the outcome is and then must make a conscious decision to participate again. Therefore, the structure of the game forces the player to be an active loser, to subject himself to the possibility of losing any more money than he has already lost requires that he place a wager for a specified amount. He has to actively participate to lose and do nothing to stop losing. Obviously, if the player does nothing, he will not be subjecting his assets to the possibility of loss. If the player is losing consistently, he will need to confront his beliefs about loss and failure to quit playing altogether. This could be difficult, because he can always rationalize that, based on the odds, he is bound to win eventually, and that he can always quit after the next game. But he does not need his own mental structure to end any particular game because it's automatic. This is very much different from the market environment where you can be a passive loser. Once you put on a trade, you have to actively participate to end your losses. You don't need to do anything to continue to lose, and the market could go against your position indefinitely. If for any reason you choose not to act or can't act, you could lose everything you own. And more. Depending on the size of your position and the volatility of the market, this could happen very quickly. The only way out is to confront your personal issues about greed, loss, and failure. What specific issues or combination of them come into play in each trade will depend on whether you are in a winning or losing position. Since all of us seem instinctively to avoid confronting any issue that could cause pain, such as getting out of a winning trade too soon or having to admit we were wrong to get out of a loser, the easiest way out of a situation like this is to convince ourselves, indulge ourselves in the illusion, we are in a winning trade that will never end, or gather all the evidence possible to suggest that we really aren't in a losing trade. Therefore, in either case we will have no reason to confront the forces.